The Godchaux is back with trade scenarios, predictions, landing spots for all those trade candidates that you're hearing about in rumors right now. There's all kinds of rumors, a lot to talk about. Let's break it down. Here's a scenario for Titans pass rusher Harold Landry that I absolutely love. Earlier today, it was announced that the Titans are allowing him to seek a trade. Maybe they want to move in a different direction. He's a little expensive, but a solid pass rusher, pretty productive when he's on the field. I love the fit for the Patriots. We're going to talk about a lot more with Landry and landing spots in a second, but I love the fit for the New England Patriots. There's a connection there with Mike Vrabel and Terrell Williams, who's their new defensive coordinator. They were with the Tennessee Titans working with Harold Landry. They're looking for a pass rusher, and specifically in that scheme, they like to have pass rushers that can actually drop in coverage as well, and Landry is pretty solid doing that, pretty athletic. Again, he's been pretty productive. So this is a scenario I came up with. Titans get a 4th-round pick for Harold Landry, but since they're trying to push him out, maybe that's a little rich. 6th-round pick going back with the Patriots with Harold Landry. I thought that compensation made a ton of sense. The Patriots really stand out as the top landing spot. But let's take a look at some more info on Landry. If a team trades for Harold Landry, he comes with a $17.5 million cap charge. It's a lot, but man, pass rushers have large cap hits. He's pretty productive when he's on the field. Yes, he was injured 2 years ago, but again, he's pretty solid, not super old, not declining. He didn't have the best year last year, but still was productive. I think the value is a 4th or a 5th round pick. I think a swap deal like we had in that scenario with the Patriots is pretty realistic. 4th feels a little rich, so that's where the swap comes into play. It feels a little rich, not because he's solid, right, and he's productive, but because the Titans are trying to trade him right now, and he does come with a $17.5 million cap charge. But a 5th-round pick, which is possible, it doesn't seem like enough. Everyone's looking for pass rushers. You're not going to be able to find a guy nearly this good in the draft around this range. So a 5th doesn't really feel like enough, but it's definitely possible. The Titans could pay a portion of that salary if necessary. It's not really necessary if the Patriots trade for him, but they may prefer the Titans to do that anyways. But the Titans could pay a small portion of the 17.5 to help a team afford him a little bit better, because teams want to be able to trade for Landry and make other moves, right? Top landing spots, I love the Patriots. We just talked about my top scenario there. The Cardinals as well. They need a pass rusher. He fits the Jonathan Gannon scheme. Monty Ossenfort is their GM. He was formerly with the Tennessee Titans, so very familiar with Harold Landry. Panthers definitely looking for a pass rusher. You would definitely fit Evero's scheme as well as a stand-up rush pass rusher. Definitely could see the Panthers. And then the Buccaneers definitely looking at another good fit. Todd Bowles' scheme makes a lot of sense. They're looking for a pass rusher that's a little more productive. In Seattle, as long as they cut some guys, I could see as well. And Mike McDonald typically likes to have pass rushers that can drop in coverage. So a 3-4 outside linebacker, most likely as a pass rusher. It's what he's been for Tennessee. So I'd look for the teams that could pay him, afford this, have picks to trade if they want to, and then he kind of fits that role that we just talked about. Jonathan Allen of the Commanders is seeking a trade granted by Washington, and I know the landing spots for Jonathan Allen, but it is tough to pinpoint the number one most likely landing spot for Jonathan Allen. I thought the 49ers made some sense, but I'll tell you why it's a little tough to pinpoint right now, even though we can pick out obvious landing spots. It's because it's dependent on if he is demanding a new contract. He has 1 more year left on his deal. Is he demanding a new contract right away? If he is, a team like the Niners might not be that interested because they're worried about getting Purdy a long-term extension. They're dealing with Deebo Samuel, who we'll talk about. They want to add other pieces in free agency in the offseason that are going to have long-term contracts. So I don't think they would be that interested if he's demanding a big contract right away. But if he is willing to play out the last year on his deal, there's a possibility. I think he just wants to win and find the right fit. Then the Niners would be all over it. Play 1 more year. They can pay him. They have a lot of cap space this year. They don't have a ton for the future. They have kind of some reserved for a guy like Brock Purdy, which they're working on an extension right now as we speak. So it would make some sense then if he's willing to play that last year, and then the 49ers kind of can decide in the future what they do. So Jonathan Allen and the Niners. Commanders get a 5th round pick, and that does seem low. for a really good player, but he is coming off a season where he was injured. He is 30 years old. He has an expiring deal. He's a little expensive, so that kind of brings his value down a bit, and it feels like the Commanders are kind of pushing him out. They have, Jerzon Newton, Johnny Newton, that they drafted last year. Then they're looking to add more, whether it's free agency or the draft, to pair with Newton and their star guy, Daron Payne. So this was a scenario that made some sense, but again, it's dependent on if Jonathan Allen is demanding an extension. More info on Jonathan Allen. If he's traded for, he comes with a $16.35 million cap charge. It's a bit, but again, D tackles and good ones like Allen are pretty valuable, right? He's probably worth the money, but maybe declining a little bit. Still very good, coming off an injured season, but wasn't injured the full year. Again, I think the value drop, his actual talent says round 3, probably round 4, maybe round 3. But I think because the other factors, and the Commanders are just looking to trade him right now, and they could actually cut him. That's a possibility to kind of free that money and just add guys that fit Dan Quinn's defense a little bit more. They could be looking to go in a different direction. So because all those factors, it drops his value. So I think a 5th round pick or equal value to the 5th round pick, a swap deal like we talked about with Jaire Landry, could make some sense. The Commanders could pay a portion if they need to. They have a lot of cap space. So could they pay a portion of the salary and then get a 4th round pick? It's definitely possible as well. Top landing spots, we talked about the Niners, but the Niners, if Jonathan Allen is absolutely demanding a pricey contract extension, less likely for the Niners then. The Chargers could be interested to be a solid fit. Even though he's been in 4-3 his whole career, Chargers do run more of a 3-4 base. They could make it work. They give different looks as well. Steelers, similar thing. They definitely could use a guy like Allen. And the Packers could be they switched to more of a 4-3 last year. They could be looking at him as a fit next to Kenny Clark. I think it'd be a good pairing. They're not really the same, so they're good kind of pairing right next to each other. I think teams that might be interested, or you out there might maybe think will be interested, I think they should stay away. Chicago Bears, Carolina Panthers, Arizona Cardinals, New England Patriots. Why? They all have something in common. They are very young, upside-ish teams that should build through the draft. Absolutely build through the draft rather than trading for a 30-year-old that came off an injured season that needs a new deal. Stay away from that. Would not agree with those teams doing it unless, even if it's dirt cheap, it's what are you going to build with the young talent you have? Continue to add young talent. You're going to add a veteran guy that's, is he going to be around long term? But I do think a team like the Panthers, I definitely could see being interested, maybe tempted to pull that trigger. We'll see. If cut, it adds a whole other host of teams here. The Vikings, I really watch for the Vikings if Jonathan Allen was caught. I don't think they want to trade for him. They're very limited on picks. Could they use a next year draft pick and trade for him? Certainly possible. I think, definitely possible. I think it's more likely if he's cut. Cowboys would strongly be interested if he's available, to be signed, obviously. And then the Bills, can they afford him? That's the question. And the Texans could have some interest if he was available via free agency. But a lot of teams could be interested. And like I said, it's tough to pinpoint the exact landing spot. I think it's a lot easier for all the other guys we're talking about, but it's tough to pinpoint the exact landing spot just because we don't 100% know yet if he is absolutely demanding that new contract. But a big-time defensive tackle that could be up for grabs here. Very interesting. How about a trade scenario for Jaguars receiver Christian Kirk? A very solid slot receiver if he is healthy, if he is on the field. Had some injuries pop up recently in his career, but could be traded, could be cut. The Jags very well could want to keep him. Some connection there with him and Trevor Lawrence. Steelers really stand out. I've talked about it before. Several teams could be interested, but the Steelers and the Commanders really stand out. We'll talk about those other teams in a second, but if he is traded for, I would lean with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Compared to the Commanders, a little bit more draft capital. They had a trade in place at the trade deadline for Christian Kirk, and he broke his collarbone, so that blew up. So it would make sense here. 4th round pick goes to the Jags. Christian Kirk, and a 7th round pick goes to the Steelers. Could be somewhere around that range. It just really depends. The Jags may not absolutely want to trade him. They might want, Trevor Lawrence and company. They might want him there. So that could keep his value at where his talent is, right? Or it could be like a lone 5th round pick. I think it would be a steal. for a team. But the Steelers, in terms of trade, make the most sense, and the scenario makes the most sense. But some more thoughts on Kirk. He does come with a $16.35 million cap charge. That's very reasonable. I know some people might think that's expensive. That's very reasonable where receivers are getting paid right now. He's a very solid slot receiver, very explosive, very solid route runner if he's healthy. That's kind of the question. His value is round 4 or round 5. He is a cut candidate, so if the Jags make it obvious they're going to cut him, I don't think they should or will, because they might want him, but if they make that obvious, then his value could drop. Could somebody get him for a 5th? At 6 just seems way too low, but maybe Liam Cohen and the Jags just do not see him as a fit in this for this new staff, and they're just trying to get him out and clear that space because they're looking to spend a lot on defense. That I guess it's certainly possible, but 4th or a 5th could be a swap of picks, like we said, really for all these guys. Top landing spots, I love the 2, and of course he could land in a different spot. That's why I listed some more, but the Steelers badly need a receiver, specifically a slot receiver. They had a trade in place for Kirk at the trade deadline. The Commanders, Cliff Kingsbury, Arizona, Christian Kirk connection. He was awesome for them. He loves them. They need a slot receiver. Boom. An absolute fit. Again, trade-wise, maybe the Steelers might be a little, it's 50-50. 51% Steelers, 49% Commanders is where my head is at, just because the draft capital they have, and they had a trade in place for Kirk at the deadline. Doesn't mean they're going to do it again. Maybe they're targeting someone different. Maybe they feel like they dodged the bullet. I don't know if they think like that, but we'll see. Also possible teams looking for a slot receiver. The Broncos, the Texans, the Rams, the Cowboys. Now, I don't think the Jags would maybe not trade him to the Texans in division rival, but you never know. If he's cut, those teams also could be interested. But if he's cut and he's a free agent and he's sitting there deciding between the Steelers and the Commanders, and he's already getting paid a little bit from the Jags still, I think he goes with Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels in the Washington Commanders if he is caught. But the Jaguars very well could keep him, restructure that contract, push some money back, worry about that at a different time. It's most definitely possible, but an interesting name to watch as things starting to heat up a bit. His name hasn't really been brought. All the other guys we're talking about, their names are being pumped out right now as we speak. Maybe more guys as I'm talking. Kirk got a little quiet, but things could start getting going here any second. The Green Bay Packers have been discussing trade with other teams, specifically with Jaire Alexander, their star corner as long as he's healthy. And there are quite a few teams that are pretty in an even race right now. A lot of teams I can see him ending up on. We'll talk about them in a second. But the Jaguars are standing out right now. Definitely, they kind of made it known they're looking to add defense, specifically in the secondary. They're looking to spend in free agency, but you only can add so much just in free agency. It's a weaker free agency class as well. So they could look to add a corner like Jaire Alexander, a guy that's very solid in man, in zone. The Jaguars currently have a lot of man coverage guys as they were running that last year. They're trying to add more zone. They were running way too much man. So getting a guy that's familiar with both, because you still might and want to run both, so I think that's a really solid landing spot that makes sense in terms of, fit, need, financials. There's other teams that actually might be more of a fit, but there's some obstacles there. We're going to talk about that in a second. But Alexander goes to the Jags. The Packers also pay a portion of his deal to help the Jags out a little bit. They're not desperate for those payments, but it could help because they looking to spend more of their own cap space in free agency. 4th round pick goes to the Packers. Value's a little tricky to figure out with him because he's so expensive. He's so, he has durability concerns, but he's very, very good. But that's a scenario that stood out the most to me as of right now. Alexander does come with a $17.11 million cap charge if a team acquires him. That's what the cap charge would be for that new team. And it's pretty pricey given that he has durability concerns, but for a top corner that he is, it's a reasonable number. But again, you factor in the durability concerns. Do teams want to pay that? I think the Packers are very likely going to have to pay a portion of the salary, but that could help the trade value as well. Very talented corner. If the Packers pay a lot of that salary, it could be a 3rd round pick, maybe a maximum. I'm not really counting on that, but it's possible. And then the minimum would be a 5th round pick if the Packers are just looking to push him out. Let's just get rid of him. They're not looking to pay a large portion or any of the salary. Then it could be a steal for a team. So you can kind of see a different range of things here for Alexander. But teams are talking trades right now with the Packers on Jaire Alexander. So something definitely could happen, and I would look for the Packers to probably pay a little bit of that salary. Top landing spots, it's an interesting one. The Jags we talked about. Could see the Steelers definitely looking for another corner. They have a lot of cap space this year, next year. Could see it. The Bucs, I really like the Bucs if they move on from Jamel Dean. And then they pair Alexander opposite of Zion McCollum, who they really, really like for the future. And the Raiders definitely could use another corner. I would put the Raiders higher in my thoughts on, the chances of them landing him, but there's a lot of free agents that I think they would really like. Guys like a DJ Reed, like a Paulson, a Deebo, maybe Carlton Davis, guys like that. So maybe a little less likely than the other three on the Raiders. Couple teams that I really like as fits. They just have to clear some space. It's possible for anybody to clear space, but Falcons and Bills, okay? But they can clear space, but then they have just enough to make like one move, and is this their one move, or a couple moves? And this puts a big dent in that. So easily going to be able to clear space, but what do you want to do with that limited amount of space? The Falcons could clear a little bit more than the Bills. Bills can clear a bit with restructures, but I do love the fits. Falcons have Jerry Gray on staff. He's very familiar with Jaire Alexander's time in Green Bay. I think he's going to be, pounding the table if possible for a guy like Alexander. And the Bills, it seems like a really solid fit there. They traded for his teammate Rasul Douglas, last year's trade deadline. They'd be highly interested in Jaire Alexander. If cut, add these teams to the mix. The Commanders, I don't think they would trade for him because they already traded for Marshawn Lattimore, who's a corner and has durability concerns. And they're a little limited on picks because of that. So do they trade for? I don't think so. But it is a really, really good fit. In Dan Quinn's defense, there's some familiar guys in the staff with Alexander as well. And the Vikings, who have Mike Pettin on the staff, I don't think the Packers would trade him to the Vikings. But if he's a free agent, they can't do anything about that. The Vikings definitely would be interested, and they definitely could use another corner. So big time name to watch. It was kind of close to 50-50. Cut or trade, was leaning a little bit more towards trade, but now the Packers are specifically talking deals with teams, multiple teams, on Jaire Alexander. So that kind of makes you think a trade could be coming. So it should be very interesting. It would be something if Mark Andrews got dealt, but there's some whispers about it. There's some rumors about it. Definitely possible. Several teams could be interested. I have some landing spots we'll talk about in a second, but man, the Chargers stand out for obvious reasons. I mean, the two obvious reasons: they badly need a tight end. Greg Roman is the offensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator with the Ravens. Mark Andrews balled out, was an elite tight end with them there. So it makes a lot of sense. Would definitely fit the Chargers, what they're looking for. They have cap space. It's not that expensive. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the Ravens, I have getting a third-round pick. I think the Ravens got to get a third-round pick for Mark Andrews. I mean, it could be a fourth. Could it be a fourth and something else? Could it be a third and maybe they send a late-round pick back? Sure. But I feel like they got to get a third or equal value because they could keep Mark Andrews. He has one more year left on his deal. They could keep him and him be very useful to them on what is supposed to be a Super Bowl run next year for the Ravens every year. He would be very useful to them, and then they can let him walk in free agency, and it would be a future pick, obviously, but they would get a solid compensatory pick for him, third or fourth, after using him this year. So you would have to get a third or close to or equal value, in my opinion. Will a team trade that for a guy that does have some durability concerns, maybe was on a down year, needs a new contract? Is it going to be pounding the table for one ASAP? Maybe not. So would a team give that up? I don't see why not, but maybe it stops the team from doing it. But the Chargers scenario, this one right here makes the most sense. But Andrews comes with $11 million cap charge. That is very team friendly. Like a team would love to have him for that cap charge. Again, we talked about why I think his value needs to be a round 3 or a 4, maybe more. There's a swap deal involving a 3. Just the Ravens are going to need that. I don't see them just dumping him. They can use him this year, get a compensatory pick, or just bring him back if they wanted to. So usually the Ravens trade for the guys an expiring deal. They don't trade him away, especially good ones like this. So maybe they don't trade him at all. There's some whispers about it right now, but top landing spots, several teams could be interested with the Chargers. We talked about the Broncos definitely could use a tight end like a Mark Andrews. The Colts badly need a tight end. Commanders could be a sneaky one. Not being talked about really, but Zach Ertz maybe going to retire. I did like the draft pick of Ben Sinnott. I think he has a future. Do they get another veteran like they had Ertz here? He would be dominant in that offense with Jaden Daniels in that Kingsbury offense. He'd be dominant. So I could see it totally. Also possible the Jets looking for a tight end. Do they make a splash trade though? The Patriots have tight ends, but man, what a boost it would be with Mark Andrews. I know Vrabel will probably be on board. Rams could be sneaky. I mean, they probably like Higbee back. Panthers could be a little sneaky. How much does that offense value tight end? In the Seahawks, if they move on from Noah Fant. This is more of a dark horse wild card team. Mike McDonald, even though he's a defensive guy from the Ravens, has that background, so could be interested. But the top teams really stand. The Chargers really stand out. But I know teams like the Broncos and the Colts could be pounding the table for him as well, but a very intriguing one. And Mark Andrews, could he actually be dealt? What do the Ravens get back? They got to get something decent back for him. Could it be a second-round pick just because how affordable he is, but he needs an extension on a down year. Maybe not quite that rich, but we'll see. Let's talk about Matthew Stafford. There's rumors coming out about Stafford every second. I mean, the latest rumors were Tom Brady and Stafford met up in Montana, went skiing or whatever together, and talked about him coming to Vegas to play for the Raiders. So things are they're heating up. They're getting a little crazy. I'm going to be stubborn and continue on to what I was saying. I think he stays with the Rams. The Rams are kind of just letting him go out there and see what he's worth. I think the Rams would accept a trade if they're just absolutely blown away. There are so many reasons, to me, my opinion, why a Stafford trade doesn't make sense. When no one's talking about, I don't think it makes sense for the other, the teams that are being talked about right now the most, besides the Rams, his current team, the Raiders and the Giants. So I don't think it makes sense for those teams unless they're getting him for dirt cheap. And I'll tell you why. It's because he thought about retiring. There was a month, a little less, where he had to really sit and think about, is he going to retire? And he decided to come back. That tells me what we all know. He's not going to last too much longer, even though he's still playing great. He gets banged up. He has durability concerns. He's tough as shit, and he plays through it. But what has he got? 1 or 2 more years. If he plays more than that, maybe he finally declines. So these teams are going to trade valuable picks for Stafford. And basically what you're doing, if anyone's trading for Stafford, you need to win the Super Bowl. You have to win the Super Bowl the next 2 years. You're going to maybe get to the playoffs, and then he retires, and you're like, oh, it was worth it. No, it was not worth it. So I don't really agree either side with the Rams. They were a really good team last year. They were very close. They had some mistakes against the Eagles, the Super Bowl champions, the most dominant team in football, and they still almost had a shot to beat them and maybe get to the Super Bowl. So why would the Rams kind of reset things at quarterback when they have a talented team and they can run it back? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. They have a lot of future cap space. They can pay him. Either side, a team that it would make sense for, the team like the Vikings and Steelers actually maybe could contend. And the Vikings, if they trade for them, they don't have a lot of draft picks, but Kevin O'Connell's there. That makes sense. But there's a lot of nonsense to me with this. I'm going to be stubborn. I think he's going to be back with the Rams. I've been pretty firm on that. But we'll talk some scenarios here. But first, cap charge, it doesn't even matter. $26.99 million. He wants a raise. He's going to get $50 million plus is what he's looking for. Sure, he's still great. Still easily a top 10 quarterback. Maximum value, mid to late round 1. Minimum multiple day 2 picks. It already came out, and now the Rams know that teams have interest. They know that teams already are talking to them. Hey, we're gonna up the value. We're gonna up the price. They're trying to get blown. It's similar to different situation, but it's similar to the Patriots picking 3rd overall last year. They were, hey, call us, Vikings, Giants, call us, trade up for Drake May. No, that's not enough. You're offering all this stuff. It's not enough. We're just gonna take the kid. They were only going to trade that if it was just some absurd amount. So similar situation, in my opinion, here on what the whole situation is. I just view him back with the Rams. But we'll take a look at some scenarios. If he goes to the Giants, they're not going to trade the 3rd overall pick. Maybe the Rams only trade him if it's the 3rd overall pick. It's a little crazy because he's going to retire very soon. How about 2 second-round picks? These are pretty valuable. The second-round pick this year from the Giants is pretty valuable. It could be more than that because the Rams are going to take themselves out of being a contender by trading him. So you would probably want more, but 2 second-round, they do some damage with second-round picks as well. So it could be more, but again, a team's trading for a guy that might have 1 or 2, maybe 3 more years, taking a gamble. They got to give him $50 million plus. So 2 seconds, maybe a little more if it were to be a Giants trade, something like that. It's another reason I don't really see the Stafford. Does he want to play out his final years of his career with the Giants or Raiders? Or maybe he does. I don't know. But there's my Giant scenario. If it happens, I'm not counting on it. And I had some fun with the Raiders one. So the Raiders don't pick 3 like the Giants do. A little less value. They pick at 6. So what about a swap deal? Give the Rams the 6th pick, but you take their 1st-round pick at 26. So you drop significantly. They could do the same deal as the Giants. 2 second-round picks. You have 2 seconds, add a 4th, 3rd, whatever, 5th, whatever it may be. I just wanted to give you an interesting scenario. That is, I would be possible if he were to actually be traded, but a very intriguing one there. I'm just counting on Stafford being back with the Rams. I could be wrong on that. We're going to find out. Patriots defensive tackle Davon Godchaux is a new trade candidate to watch, kind of recently added to the list as they told him to seek a trade. Switching staffs, maybe just looking to go in a different direction. They're supposed to go in free agency and the draft, obviously. So just move on from him. Pretty affordable for another team. Several teams really stand out. We'll talk about those, but the Packers stand out the most. They added to their staff, to their defensive line coach position, DeMarcus Covington, who was the defensive line coach for the Patriots while they had Godchaux, and then promoted to defensive coordinator last year. So, and they gave him an extension during that point, Godchaux that is. So obviously he thinks highly of him. Packers definitely could use another defensive tackle in there, to help stop the run is mainly what his job would be early down. So they made sense as a fit. I have a few other teams though, but I think just a swap of picks, the Packers it could be straight up a 6th round pick. I could see a swap. Packers get a 7th back. They give up a 6th. The Patriots move up around. The Packers might be stockpiling 7th round picks, if I'm not mistaken, then if that's the case. But that's the one that made the most sense in terms of scenarios. But there's some good options here. Like the Bengals could be an option for Godchaux. I thought they were an option for him at the trade deadline. Same with the Niners. I'm like, Bengals, Niners, one of these teams, there's a decent shot they could trade for him at the trade deadline. So they definitely could be interested now. I would really... Yeah, if it wasn't the Packers, I think the Niners probably my second choice and probably the Bengals third, but the Vikings make some sense as well. Brian Flores is familiar with him with their time together in Miami. Do the Vikings trade picks? Maybe it's a future pick. Texans and Raiders, some guys on staff that are familiar with him as well. Patrick Graham from the Raiders, obviously. And I listed other teams that desperately needed a defensive tackle. I thought there was more of a connection, a little bit more of a fit for him with the top landing spots that I listed. Remember, there's a couple good guys in free agency, and the draft class is loaded with defensive tackles, but he only comes with a $5 million cap charge. That's very, very affordable for a pretty solid run-stopping D-tackle. Can line up at nose tackle. I think worth the 6th round pick or a late swap, a 6 for a 7, or is it just a straight-up 7th round pick? That's definitely possible. It could be a future pick and a future year, I should say. So kind of a small trade candidate to watch. Things can start getting going with him. Definitely could see a trade happening with him. The Rams have now told Jonah Jackson to seek a trade. They're looking to move on from him. They signed him last free agency. That was one of their big signings, and they hope to put him at center, even though he played well at guard for the Lions, and he got replaced. Didn't work out. They're looking to move on from him. I mentioned this a few weeks ago. Watch out for his name to pop up, even though it hasn't yet. Now it has very recently before we're going to record this. And the Bears stand out as the most likely landing spot, in my opinion, the most likely scenario, because they badly need offensive line. I'd say interior offensive line. They do. They badly need offensive line in general, pretty much everything but a right tackle. And Ben Johnson was with the Lions. Jonah Jackson played very well enough to get a good contract with the Rams last free agency. So there's a connection there as well. Makes a lot of sense. The trade value, the compensation actually could be a little tricky here, but 6th or a 5th round pick. Went with a 6 because at first glance, he didn't work for the Rams at all. Didn't work out. Wasn't a fit. They don't like him. They benched him. They're looking to trade him. So usually guys like that are pretty cheap. We'll talk about some more factors. The more I want to talk about, the more I say could be a 5th round pick. Do the Bears... I love the fit with the Bears. It would make them better. But, man, the Bears been trading like crazy for veteran players over the years. And I think the recipe in general is just building to the draft. If you have multiple draft picks, more than you're supposed to have, use them, draft them. And then you factor in their franchise piece was the first overall pick and playing quarterback, Caleb Williams, last year. You build with rookies, draft picks around them. So a little hesitant to say the Bears should trade more picks. I think they got to cut it out with that, honestly, is my take. But this is a pretty good fit. 6th round pick would be pretty cheap. But he could cost a little bit more than that. We'll talk about that in a second here with the other landing spots. But like I said, Jackson, the Rams just looking to dump him, get rid of him. Didn't work. Everybody knows that. So he could be cheap, like a 6th round pick, right? But his cap hit is $9 million for a guard. Didn't work out at center. Guard, he has experience, starting experience. He's played pretty well in his past. $9 million is a steal, an absolute steal. Has another year on his contract at the same price, not guaranteed, the 2026 season. So that looks pretty good. And then teams, and if he's a free agent, he actually might cost you more as a chance, even though he's going to be getting paid by the Rams still. So teams might be going, and there's a lot of teams that need guards. And now all of a sudden the Chiefs might re-sign Trey Smith. Then it just crushes the O-line free agency class, right? So several teams could, get in there and be like, hey, we kind of want this guy for $9 million, and then price going to go up. Might be a little bit of a bidding war. So the more I talk about it, the more I think a 5th round pick, but it's a little bit of a risk. Didn't work out last year. Is he only good in that Lions system because he's around great offensive linemen? Could be the case. So a little bit of a risk there, but a 5th or a 6th round pick. The Rams just don't want him really, so they could cut him if they can't trade him. I would think a team could. I was originally thinking maybe more likely to be a cut, but now that I'm talking about it, a couple weeks later, I think teams could be very, very interested, but interested in him. Bears, we talked about it, stand out. Ben Johnson, badly need guard. They have cap space. $9 million won't make a dent in that. Texans make a lot of sense as well. Badly needs some guard help. I like him at left guard, so I'm kind of looking at teams that I could see making a move for him. Definitely needing a left guard. Could be a fit. Commanders, Ravens could be a sneaky one. Patriots, Saints. Saints can't spend big, but you got a cheaper option here, so that could make some sense. The Buccaneers, if they don't bring Bredesen back. So quite a few options. I really like the Bears. The Bears stand out for them. They're not afraid to make trades, even though I think they should be a little hesitant finally. They've been trading away all their picks, for veteran guys, building veterans that not really, they're not long-term options around Caleb Williams doesn't make sense. But for the right price, this one, again, really good fit, could help them a little bit. Fellow NFC West teams like the Seahawks, Cardinals, and 49ers, fellow to the Rams. They all need guards. I think to be really solid fits on these teams. Would the Rams trade? I think the Rams could actually trade them there. We see that a little bit more often lately in division, rival trades. Teams used to be like, no, I'm not doing that. Teams are a little more, they're open to doing it. So it's possible. But if he's caught, definitely those teams become more of a serious landing spot candidates for Jonah Jackson. But very intriguing one just because he's a little cheaper. He has starting experience, cheaper in terms of the cap hit, but on the compensation side as well. So we'll see what happens. I think he finds his way to Chicago. That's been my take for weeks. But a lot of teams could be interested. These teams are desperate for offensive line help. So I guess it could come down to who's the most desperate with trading picks. So we'll see. Deebo Samuel and Cooper Kupp, kind of group them together here because they're kind of in the same boat right now. They're not going to land at the same team or anything like that. But similar teams will have interest in both these guys, hoping to land one possibly. But Deebo comes with a $17.5 million cap charge. Cooper Kupp comes with a $20 million cap charge. Those are pretty big. 49ers may pay a portion if he's traded. Rams will very likely have to pay a portion if he is traded. Their max value, to me, it's going down right now. Their max value, both of them around round 5. I think Deebo is more valuable. Very max, could it be a 4th round pick with a swap? Maybe. 5th round pick, possible. I think Cooper Kupp has a little less value. Could be down to the minimum, a late swap. And I'll tell you why. It's because these two teams are looking to trade these guys. They're pretty expensive. They're declining. They have durability concerns. With the Niners and Deebo during the season, they were unhappy with each other, and it came out they're looking to split up. They're just looking to do that. And Cooper Kupp, the Rams just don't want to pay that. I can see a scenario where Kupp takes a pay cut, they rework the deal, and he stays with the Rams. I could see that. But it's been made obvious that these teams really are looking to move these guys. So why would a team go out there and trade something for these guys? They're expensive. They have durability concerns. Their current teams, it feels like, very well could cut them. These are strong cut candidates. I would not trade for these guys right now, even as much as how fun Deebo is, and I wouldn't trade for him just because the situation. He's probably going to get cut. He's expensive right now, so I know I could see it though. Some team trades like a 5th round pick for Deebo, and then like the casual people are going to be like, that's a steal, and it's even if you get a good player, it's not really wise given the circumstance. It's not the end of the world, but it's not really wise given the circumstances. So I'm actually leaning towards these guys' value dropping, them getting cut, and then teams kind of waiting for them to get cut, then trying to get in there. Several landing spots. If we combine trade possibilities and cut possibilities, the Commanders come up with both these guys, but they could have maybe a guy like Christian Kirk is number 1 on their list, or a free agent. Is number 1 on their list. The Steelers, same thing, pretty much the same situation, but they could be kind of high on Deebo Samuel. The Ravens, I think, would be more, a Deebo Samuel player, but they would prefer if he's cut to add him. Texans could be interested in either. There's actually some coaching connections there. I think would be more interested if he's cut. The Broncos looking for a slot receiver. Falcons could have high interest, I'd say, in Cooper Kupp if he is cut. Some coaching connections there, former Rams guys, obviously, on that staff there. The Lions, they've been linked to Cooper Kupp. I don't think they need a slot. I know they don't need a slot receiver because they have Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best in football. Could they? I think they would be more interested in Samuel if he's available. The Patriots been linked to receivers. I think they need more of the younger guys, but if they miss out on him, again, they might not be able to get T. Higgins, even though these guys aren't comparable to him. Did they get desperate? If they're cut, the Cowboys, I could see more so for Samuel. Raiders as well. Let's say they add a quarterback. They're going to need more receivers. And the Chargers, more so Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, same role as Ladd McConkey. They're good with Ladd McConkey, obviously, so I don't see that one. But, again, main point here, they are trade candidates. A lot of landing spots dependent on if they're traded or cut. Values dropping. Teams are waiting right now for them to be cut. They're not jumping in, hey, we're going to give you this right now. Well, maybe, but it's probably something dirt cheap. Swap, late round pick. So maybe don't count on a trade here, but some team could get desperate. I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend trading for these guys, and they'll be cut. And the only chance that they're not is if, Kupp kind of takes a pay cut, reworks his deal. But it seems like the Niners and Deebo Samuel are definitely going to split. So this was a massive video. I really enjoy doing these ones. A lot of work goes into them. So a lot of news coming out right now at Combine time. Combine starts tomorrow. We have full coverage on our Twitter, but we have a video every single day with the winners and losers, and then updated mock when it's all said and done. Then we're at the franchise tag deadline, and then we're at free agency. More trades along the way. We got you covered more than anyone else out there. What a wonderful time of the year. I'm freaking pumped. So hopefully you can join us, like, subscribe, turn notifications on. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.